everyone. My name's Helena Laurent. I'm the Director General of Consumers International. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this session today. We have chosen to focus our session on global issues and to make sure that you can hear them from our next generation. On the International Youth Day this year, we launched a Next Generation Network. We picked the best and the brightest from around the world in consumer advocacy. We have 30 of them this year, and we are really delighted to introduce a few of them to you today. They're going to share a little bit about why they've joined consumer advocacy and focus in on some of the global issues that we all face wherever we are around the world. First, let me introduce them to you. Could we go first to the UK?
Hi, I'm Genevieve Lloyd. I'm a campaigns manager at which is the UK's consumer association. We have about 1.5 million members and supporters. We work across a range of issues, and I personally work on travel and personal finance. So it's a real pleasure to be here, and thanks so much for inviting me to take part in this discussion.
Awesome. So from the UK, can we go to Nigeria?
Hello, everybody. My name is Ebele Chukwumoyi. I am the Communications and Social Media Manager at Consumers Awareness Organization. This organization is interested in creating awareness among the Nigerian populace. Personally, I'm interested in financial inclusion, and I'm running a master's degree at Georgetown. It's really great to be here.
Awesome. A warm welcome to Malaysia.
Yes, hi, my name is Ravinesh Udayasurian, and I'm from Federation of Malaysia Consumer Association, the biggest consumer association in Malaysia. We have about 38.4 million consumers here in Malaysia. So I'm mostly focusing on energy because it's a big industry here in Malaysia, since it's being monopolized by a single provider. So we are always striving for better energy. So it's good to be here to share my knowledge on the energy industry.
Perfect. Thank you. Warm welcome. And now to Peru.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elisa from Peru, from the Consumer Association and Users Peruvians, and we are working a lot in food, in technologies, in public services, and we are really worried not only for the problems that are happening in Peru, if not for the problems in Latin America in general. Thanks.
Fantastic. And last but not least, let's go to Australia.
Hello, everybody. My name is Patrick. I'm a campaigner at Choice, which is Australia's largest consumer advocacy body. We have 180,000 members and we champion a range of causes. I am particularly passionate about finance and making finance fairer for people, and that's what I'll hopefully be able to discuss today.
Awesome. So thank you, all of you, for being here today, no matter what time around the world. We thought it could be really interesting to dive into some of those issues that you work on and campaign on every day. It really strikes me that wherever we are in the world, some of these are global issues as well. And so I'd like to sort of just understand from you a little bit more about what you see as the future. What are the issues? What can we do more about them as consumer advocates? Because I ended with you, Patrick, I'm going to start with you for this round. Can you just give us a bit more of a flavor of the types of work that you're doing, what you would hope to see evolve for the future? Is this just an Australian phenomenon? Do you think that these are ideas that could have relevance for the rest of us? Over to you.
My pleasure. I might start talking about the banking industry, and Australia's in a pretty unique position because we have one of the highest levels of household debt in the world. We're actually second in the world, and this has been a real issue that we've been facing during COVID, because I think across the world there's been households, there's been families who have had mortgages, who have had debt, but also have had a job and suddenly are experiencing unemployment for the first time. And that's something that we're really trying to campaign and fight for, is for people who are unemployed, who have lost hours due to COVID, and how we can actually support them. And at its most fundamental core, why we campaign and why we advocate is really for the principle of fairness. And I think that's something that we've really been striving for in the work that we do. And I think that's something that organisations, financial institutions have really struggled in Australia over the past number of years. We've had so many scandals. And I think if you look across the world, there's a real issue with a power imbalance with financial institutions and consumers. And I think Australia is rather lucky because we've got strong laws, but there's so much more that we need to do. And what Choice is really pushing for is to embed these values of fairness, and I think some even more radical values like compassion and empathy actually into the legislation. There's something that's been discussed in financial services in Australia, which is known as the fairness imperative, and that's to treat people with fairness. And that's something that we're really pushing for. And, we've been in so many encounters with financial institutions taking advantage of people, and that's something we're really striving for, is fairness in the laws, fairness in the regulators, fairness in ombudsman schemes, so that people can actually have a safe financial future and have a sustainable future.
That's beautiful. I love that idea of the fairness imperative. What's the most effective thing that you've seen work to drive that principle home?
So very recently, there was much greater penalties for a financial corporation who didn't treat customers fairly or act fairly. And these penalties are actually very large. It's up to 10% of annual turnover, or it's 3 times the amount of benefit gained by the financial institution. This is a really large amount. So actually codifying that into the legislation, into law, and then enforcing it with a strong regulator is the best example that we've seen, that really puts that fear into financial institutions that they have to act well, because the truth is, without that fear, we see across the world, across every country, large institutions take advantage of consumers.
Thank you. So fairness imperative with both carrots and sticks.
Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that perspective. I would love to come, Ebele, to you at this point, and sort of what drives you? What's your passion or the issue that you really sort of, you wake up for in the morning?
In line with what Patrick just said, in line with him reiterating the need for fairness, I would say that one thing I'm really passionate about is equity in distribution of resources. And you see how important this is in Nigeria today, especially with the COVID situation. You see the disparities, and you see that the COVID is affecting people differently because they are from different social statuses. And I would like to outline this in 3 major ways. So the first one is access to power supply, and the second one is access to internet opportunities, and then how these affect education. Because you find out that in Nigeria, about 50% of the population is not covered by public electric power. And this is worse in rural areas. And you also find out that people in those rural areas don't have access to internet facilities. And so when the world moved to e-learning, you had people who didn't have access to these e-learning facilities. And so for months, they haven't had access to an education. And this could cause problems for the nation in the long run. So these are the issues that we are interested in, not just finding solutions to problems of power supply or financial inclusion and things but we are also interested in making sure that our solutions are more equitable and inclusive.
That's fascinating. Yeah, no, incredibly important point about this covers all sectors, and the solution has to take that into account as well. Can you share a particular solution that you feel has been really innovative or has incorporated that?
So I would say you see, for instance, the government in Nigeria trying to play a role by, for instance, trying to distribute palliatives during the pandemic, or you see institutions like the Central Bank of Nigeria trying to give loans. But this brings us back to the issues, because if the central bank, for instance, wants to give loans to SME owners, but these people do not have bank accounts, they are excluded. So the solution currently is there have been rounds of sensitization going around, getting people to sign up for e-platforms like e-banking and things like that. But I would say that the take-up hasn't been as much as we would want it to be.
Right. Okay, that's really helpful. And I think that's really important as we think about how technology impacts how is everybody able to take advantage of that? You know, what happens? Let's really have an inclusive approach to thinking about this fourth industrial revolution. Ravinesh, could I come to you? Because I think you have talked to us really well about the energy problem. How do you bring all of this, the sort of the fairness imperative into energy and the energy transition?
Yeah, thanks, Helena. So just before I start, I was, how to say, intrigued by the way that Patrick said the household debt in Australia is quite high, and I thought my country had high household debts. So it's quite interesting to know that they actually second highest. And also touching on Ibele as well, that, you know, when she touched on internet and electricity, that's where I come in. That is where I want to stress out how important is actually electricity. Without electricity, half of things in the world doesn't run. That's the fact of it. I mean, things in the hospital, things with COVID, things in school, things at home. Without energy, you can't do much. And given that it's already the COVID-19 pandemic, we do not want to heap another problem into the consumers. They have enough problems in their hands. And not having electricity, well, that's a bummer. So it's going to cause a lot of disruption, especially when it comes to e-learning. So that is why I've been striving a lot when it comes to energy. Why? Because if you see around the world, most countries have multiple energy providers. So we have our choice, whether we want A or B or C. However, in Malaysia, we have only one energy provider. It's the national energy provider. So you don't really have a choice. They are the only person that you can buy energy from. So this comes, all the stigma by, monopolizing the energy. But leaving that aside, we don't mind them monopolizing. However, we want quality services. End of the day, the reason why we have multiple choice is to ensure consumers get the best out of the service. But if the single service that's being provided is good enough, we don't mind. It's not a problem. So the problem that I want to highlight is, I think this problem is going to be faced in other countries as well. During COVID-19, during movement control orders, where you are restricted from moving, meter readers can't come to your house to take your meter reading. This is for countries that are still using analog meters, digital meters, where they need a physical presence to read your meter, to get your bill every month. However, in Malaysia, for a duration of about 4 months, we didn't have meter reader due to the movement control order. So everyone started getting accumulated bills. What happens when you get accumulated bills? Your bill is very high. After 4 months, you see your bill is what? Hundreds of dollars, $200 when it should only be 40, 30. You see, theoretically, yes, if you were to pay 30 a month, 4 months would be 120. However, consumers do not like seeing a big value when they get the energy bill. It's a sudden jump, You get a bill and suddenly you have a damage of $200. So it's a big thing. So that's why we've been striving for smart meters. Smart meter is a technology that allows consumers to take charge of the electricity. They would get updates every half an hour on how much is their usage, and they don't need a meter reader. That solves so many problems. One, you get to be energy efficient. Why? How are you energy efficient by having smart meter? Well, every half an hour you get to see how much you have been using your energy. So you would know what's wrong with my usage pattern. So you can correct yourself. Second, there's no need of a meter reader. So I guess smart meter is a very good technology that should be not only incorporated in Malaysia, all over the world as well.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ravinesh. So what we've said is there should be a fairness imperative. It's across all sectors. We need strong solutions. We need solutions that actually take into account this need for inclusion. What I love that you brought in there is we need to look at the underlying business models and competitive situation. And then also remember that technology is a solution. Technology is also an innovation, a ways forward for consumers and the reality of, the consumer experience. Let's come back to this because I want the group to also correct the narrative that we're building here. I would love to come to Peru next and sort of listen to what issue would you like to raise and sort of make sure we've got on our radar screen so we build this global picture?
Thanks, Elena. Latin America and also Peru are living terrible moments. We have economic, political, sanitary crisis all in the same moment. But I would like to highlight five issues that we are facing related with foods. That is one of our biggest problems. The first task is about the inequity in the access of food. We have structural and social gaps that make the people, especially people who are vulnerable consumers, can access to food. So that is the biggest problem, especially people who live in rural areas. Also, the second point is about the higher levels of informality. Because of COVID and because of the lack of timely solution, there are many people who are selling products that are unsafe, that are unsuitable, and also that are not controlled by the government. So that is one of the biggest problems in Latin America. The third point, and I think that is one of the most important in this moment, is about the political crisis that are facing all the countries in Latin America in the same time. This is incredible, but Argentina, Chile, Peru, Brazil, Ecuador, all the countries are facing political crisis. So that avoids that people can access to food because the strategy doesn't work. All the strategies, all the political sanitaries are stopped. So we can face COVID effectively. And also another problem that we face is about the price of foods. We have abrupt changes in the price of food. For example, the price of chicken one day can be $6 and the other day is $12. So the price doubled. So what is happening? We don't know, and people can access to basic foods. And finally, the last point that I want to highlight is about the prevalence of obesity and undernutrition that we face. We coexist with two opposites, with obesity and undernutrition. It's incredible, but we have people that live in the same city and have different problems. And as a consequence, in this crisis, in this sanitary crisis, we have many people that are suffering a lot because people with obesity are the people with more complications for COVID.
Absolutely. And I think what's really interesting is that we've got this growing realization that our crises are linked, right? It's sort of the health, the climate, the economy, those things are, of course, and we understand it as consumer advocates, those things are linked, and there needs to be a sort of interlinked solution, which, as you pointed out, has to be part of the political system and involving consumer advocacy in this. Thank you. I'm going to go to the UK at this point, and Jen, and then I'd love to sort of go round again, time permitting, and just your reactions to what you've heard. Do these issues resonate? And what are your hopes for the future? But Jen, where do you see the most need for change? Where's your focus?
So I think actually the idea of fairness in the broader sense has been really interesting to sort of hear in those different contexts, because I think when people are treated fairly, then they're able to make informed decisions about what they're buying, about what they're choosing to sort of bring into their homes, etc. And one of the areas that I'd like to talk about is plastics, single-use plastics, and sort of recycling. And I think that that's an issue that we've seen. I mean, it's been a problem for years. We all know it. In the UK, the average person produces 99 kilos of plastic waste a year. That is second only to the United States. And if you look at the difference in population size, that is quite terrifying. So it's been a huge issue on our political agenda for a while. But we've started to see some positive progress. We have the Blue Planet effect. We have David Attenborough putting out documentaries, and we saw a genuine shift in sort of consumer behavior and awareness of the problem, and people really trying to engage with stuff around recycling, about how do they start using reusable products and not just opting for single use. But I think one of the worrying things with COVID, and since the pandemic has broken out, has been the kind of reverting back to some of the old ways of consuming things. So we've seen, for obvious reasons, masks and gloves, for example, coming back, becoming more commonplace. That's understandable. But we've also seen shifts to things like disposable coffee cups when you go to your coffee shop, rather than reusable. And I think that comes down to that sort of lack of information potentially around the health risks associated with it, or the sort of impact that will have in the bigger sort of scheme, or the grander scheme. And I think that kind of comes down to there's sort of two issues here. And one is the health concerns and how long that's going to last. and then whether the impact that has on behavior is permanent. And I think this sort of U-turn that we've seen in the short term makes sense and is completely understandable. But I think the real worry is that risks becoming a permanent way of consuming things. And we've also seen a shift towards online shopping naturally. Again, we've talked about lockdown already and sort of limitations on movement. And as people don't have options other than to do their grocery shopping online or just do, their Amazon shop or whatever it might be, we've already talked about the excessive packaging that comes with a lot of that. And that, again, is sort of outside of a lot of people's control, or a lot of people don't realize that the individual choices that they're making have an impact on a broader scale. So I think it really does come back to that information and education piece. We're already seeing some sort of public awareness campaigns in places like Wales in the UK, where we're trying to promote recycling practices, trying to get people to use reusable products. But I think that that's a real push, or there needs to be a real push from groups like us, from businesses themselves, to be honest, and obviously from government and regulators to try and push that back up the agenda, because I don't think sustainability should come at, or health should come at the expense of sustainability, because the two can be done at the same time.
That's awesome. I'm really proud that next year, actually, World Consumer Rights Day will be focused around plastic pollution. And I hope all of our members around the world join in that. I'm conscious of time. I know the Euro Consumers folks, we could go on all day on this. I think this is fantastic. We're only been given half an hour. So with this, I'd love to hear from each of you, but very briefly, a 30-second vision. What do you hope as the next generation, and what do you see as your role in making some of those changes happen? I'm going to go in the same order again. Patrick?
Great. I think a main problem we've experienced across all industries is a short-termism view, a view of short-term profit over a few months rather than a long-term view. And we see that with climate change, we see it with energy policy, food security, financial services. And I think young people really have that view, which isn't just short-term, it's the longer multi-generational view. So what I'm really hoping for as a young person, as part of a young movement, is that we shift our focus and feel empowered to take the longer-term view and take action with that approach.
Awesome. Ebele?
So for me, with regards to what we said before, what I would really love to see as a young leader is more equitable distribution in resources going forward. And I think this is only possible through stronger institutions that help regulate the industries. So for instance, we have like the Nigerian Communications Commission in Nigeria that deals with telecommunications. And so they are able to say, okay, this is how much telecoms providers will charge consumers to ensure that services are affordable and in order to ensure equitable distribution. So, and as young generation leaders, what I think we can do to help this is to hold these institutions accountable, and you can see that trend in Nigeria now when people like ask their representatives and see what's going on. So we should be able to hold the people, the industry leaders responsible for these things accountable.
Awesome. Thank you. Ravinesh.
Yeah, so I would just like to emphasize on one point, which is the whole SDG goal is wholesome. If you have noted, we got 17 goals and it touched every single thing that we spoke so far. So I would really encourage the youth to actually learn about the SDG goal and go by it. It could be your holy Bible for the next few years. As long as you're following it, you should be fine. And second point, like how Jen said, it's a kickstart. This whole COVID-19 is a kickstart for governments, for industries, whereby we had a taste of how the world would be with less pollution and less waste generally. So let's not go back to our old practice and just maintain with this new one. Make sure that we're on the right track. Don't go back to our old carbon-heavy lifestyle. Just let's maintain what we have seen so far. So the youths are very important, because why? In the next 20 years, the youths are the ones who's going to be facing either the consequences or the benefits of the actions that are going to be taken now. So youths, please wake up and make a change. Do not follow the old carbon-heavy way or lifestyle.
Awesome. Thank you. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Elena. Well, we can talk about this a lot, but I would like to emphasize about food. Definitely, we need change, And that sheds implicate, for example, about this issue that we need sustainable and healthy diets. That is really important, and the role of consumers are in the top. So, for example, if we want to increase the demand of products that are more friendly with the planet, that have more lower carbon footprint, that promote biodiversity, traditional, ecological, and local foods, it's necessary that consumers change their habits. So it's necessary to work with consumers. And at that point, it's important integration of all these sectors: government, industry, academic, civil society, and farmers. It's necessary to work together. So also, I would like to say that in Latin America, it's necessary to listen the voice of young consumers, and also to listen the consumer sectors. Here we have a different perspective, but sadly, our perspective not in all the time are listened. So that is necessary that our perspective is included.
Awesome, thank you. And Jen, what are your hopes for the future?
I think young people over the past few years, particularly when we're talking about climate change and sort of pollution, etc., have shown that they're sort of driving that movement and can really be quite a powerful force when they come together. And I think a group like this is really important to try and bridge that gap, I think, between the principles that I say young people across the world sort of live by. We're aware that it's our future. We're aware that we're the ones that are going to have to deal with sort of ramifications of what's done now and what happens today. So we're very aware of that, and we do have sort of principles that I think we share that possibly other generations don't in quite the same way. But I do think bridging that gap between that and consumerism is a big role for us, because I don't think that a lot of young people think about consumer advocacy and sort of their consumer rights in the way that they possibly should be. At the end of the day, we are all consumers, and we all engage with businesses in every facet of life. So I think it's really important that we try and harness some of that energy for this movement. And hopefully this is the first step.
That was awesome, you guys. So one, I apologize, I have my own young people going on in the background here. So for anybody watching, if there was any noise, it was my side. Let's see if we can wrap this up. I was inspired by that conversation. I think we didn't just go around the world. We went around the whole radar screen of issues that is on the minds of consumer advocates, whether finance, the digital future, e-commerce, energy, food, sustainable consumption, our whole system. But we also went through the levers that we have to be working with. So our principles, the solutions, the stakeholders we work with, the competitive system, technologies, and really our behaviors as consumers, and a more conscious way of thinking about how we bring all of that together. I am thrilled and honored to have had the opportunity to moderate that with you guys today. So thank you very, very much. Maybe I think Euroconsumers is telling me that we have to stop at this point. So maybe we just say farewell, and let's look forward to meeting up again very, very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.